Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Bottom Line. I'm your host, Lauren Kalil. Today, myself and Morning Chalk Up CEO and founder Justin LoFranco are discussing open registration numbers. The good news, the numbers are up from last year. The unofficial registrants this year are just over 290,000 people. Obviously, this is far from CrossFit's peak in 2018, but an upwards trend nonetheless. Justin, what are your initial thoughts when you see this heading back up in the right direction?
Yeah, so for the last 2 years, from 2020 to 2021, and then from 21 to 22, seen basically annualized 10% growth. There was about 10.2% growth from 90. Yep, there you go. From 20 to 21, and then another
Mhm.
11.5% growth from 21 to 22, which is relatively steady. It's consistent growth. That's positive growth. So all in all, I think you got to look at this and say, yeah, definitely a good thing. It's moving in the right direction. I think. Look, a lot of people looked at it last year and said, all right, look, in the midst of COVID year, in the midst of a lot of the PR elements that were plaguing CrossFit, the 10% growth was a good thing because obviously you look at the chart and you were seeing it going backwards year over year, significant backwards growth, 33%, 14% backwards negative growth. So they definitely reversed the trend in 2021. Now they're continuing to move it in the right direction in 2022, but most of the world is really outside of this COVID lockdown where they're not able to get to gyms, at least for the majority of the CrossFitting world here. So all in all, I think we should use a positive, not a monstrously large growth, 10%, but still definitely a positive.
I mean, when you look at the growth, though, there's so much that has changed in the past year when you look at the leadership and some of the other things. But looking at the programming overall, this year it was more inclusive than any year, especially taking away. I know a lot of people were upset about the concept to rower being taken away, but for the longest time, you would look at websites like Rogue and you couldn't even get your hands on equipment like that. So I
Right.
think CrossFit did a really good job of programming it so that people at their own boxes could, or at their own home gyms rather, could still participate. What are some ways that we think that, CrossFit can continue to grow the registration now that we, have a couple of years of consistency under
Yeah.
our belt and are moving in a different direction?
Well, it does certainly seem to be indicated by CrossFit's leadership that they plan to continue moving forward with the existing format.
Mhm.
I think that if we're taking them at face value, we shouldn't expect any major changes. So I think that affiliates and athletes, competitors, fans, everyday athletes like me, who are doing this for fun, they should probably expect a relatively consistent thing going forward. And that was one of the reasons that actually helped, I think, usher them into the higher growth periods. I mean, if we look back from 2016 to 2017, they grew a 17% to 380,000 participants, far more than what we're seeing today. And then they only grew about 10% from 380 to 416,000. But again, 416,000 being about 122,000 more than we're seeing right now. So those were the consistent years where it was at sort of the pinnacle of CrossFit's not only open registration and participation, but I think interest in the sport, both from a partnership standpoint and a viewership standpoint. They had I don't know what the exact number is, but several
Mhm.
years of straight consistency between a similar open regionals games format. And I think one thing that's very, very clear across the board is consistency, expectations. So, I mean, one way of growing registration is not throwing the community curveballs constantly. And we've seen a lot of curveballs. I've been through basically, I think all of them now, except for the really early ones. And I mean, from a media standpoint, it's tough and challenging when we're constantly, on our toes, waiting for information, guessing what the format's going to be for the affiliates who are really the conduit. The affiliates are really the conduit for the open participation. For them, I think there's two things: consistency, which is just what I said, and the second thing is incentivizing them to encourage participation and registration. And right now, we're not seeing a massive amount of incentives. In fact, there's really never been an incentive to encourage registration. And the single greatest touch point between a registrant slash athlete slash member taking the step to pay money to sign up is the coach. And right now, we just don't see a lot of incentive for the coach to literally go say, "Hey, you know what? You should sign up for the Open because this is the way. This gets you involved in this, or this gets involved with you with that." They're the ones who need to really make the case for that. And if the coach decides to do it, that's great. If the owner decides to do it, that's great. But there's not a massive amount of incentive for doing that. So I think those are two immediate things: consistency and incentivization. Those would make a difference.
I think that one thing that could have been an incentive though is if CrossFit released the level system earlier. I think that that really would have been something that would have given, that person that may be on the fence or, why am I going to do this? I don't care where I chalk up on the leaderboard, but I do care which level I'm at so that I can see my growth, whether I want to compete at a local competition down the road. And maybe they're using the level system. So I think like if CrossFit were to communicate that earlier, that could have been a good tool to get more people to sign up
Yeah, potentially. CrossFit, did, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was before the Open, I did see something about
in
it.
their Hopper email.
Really quickly touched on. I believe
Mhm.
we covered it to a certain degree, or at least put it out there to the extent that we knew information. But later on, we learned a lot more information about it and
Right.
why it really mattered. And yeah, I think CrossFit has consistently had a communications problem to a certain degree. And somewhat of an identity crisis because you're not really sure exactly which direction they're going, and you're not really sure exactly when it's going to be communicated, and that kind of goes with the consistency thing. Um, yeah, I think CrossFit, the relationship between the Open and other competitions is inconsistent at best. Some of the semifinals use it for their other tiers,
Mhm.
for the community tiers, not the professional tier that's going to qualify you for the games, but maybe an RX division or scale division. Some of them are using that. Some other licensed events are using that to help to help you indicate, maybe even pre-qualifying, you don't have to do the qualifier, or helping to set you in your area. But those are few and far between. You're talking about a dozen, 2 dozen events out there. And really, that's just not enough correlation between open performance and why you should do it, and then competing in a random event in, Minnesota in the next 4 months. So
Sure.
not because it's a bad idea, just I don't know if it's going to have the impact that's going to drive 120,000 registrations.
Sure. And when we look at over 11% more registrants from last year to this year, is this going to be a big enough increase to see an actual impact in the sport of CrossFit?
Well, so when we look at numbers like this, if you're looking at this from a revenue generating standpoint, the 10% growth is decent. So that certainly goes to fund the game's operation, the rest of the game season. They've obviously added additional money making opportunities through the quarterfinals registration, and now then they obviously have semifinals and then games registrations too. So they've made 10% more money. And I think that's by and large a good thing. Is it going to be impactful in the participation and growth of the sport? Is hard to say because what we do know is that there's obviously more than 293,805 people competing in the Open. Those are 293,000 people that decided to sign up for the Open, and then those people's interest in the actual sport of fitness are not necessarily a correlation. Now, I think that if you have 500,000 people competing next year, I think there's a correlation between a large scale growth and increased interest in the sport. However, I don't see a 10% increase being significant to how many more people are going to buy tickets or how many more people are going to tune in to the games or to semifinals. And so I don't know if it's going to be a massive impact in economic standpoint or from a viewership standpoint. I think it's positive. I think it's good for affiliates. I think it's good for the business and the ecosystem of CrossFit to continue to see positive growth. Certainly, we don't want to see negative growth. Massive impact. Yeah, if they want to add 20% next year, and we're roughly 40% higher than we were when Rosa acquired the company. Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. I think they're moving in that direction. I'd hope to see that, but I wouldn't bet a massive impact on that as of today.
So even though there's like this quarterfinal stage now where CrossFit is making an additional fee because you have to pay, I think it's $50
Yeah.
for that 10% to sign up. Do you think that that has any impact when looking at the growth of the sport, or do you think that that is just a standalone thing?
Well, I think it sets themselves up financially to be able to continue to be a viable wing of CrossFit. For many years, CrossFit has not turned a profit for the games alone perspective. I don't know what all the figures are. We've heard different figures from very authoritative individuals who have said, CrossFit is not making money at the games. CrossFit finally made a little bit of money at the games. They were in the black. I don't know where the situation is today, but I know that it is not an enterprise that's turning in that's churning $20 million annually in profit. So wherever they are in the general spectrum, I'm not exactly sure, but continuing to find revenue opportunities continues to support actually building an ecosystem in a sport. So it's A, necessary, and B, good that they are increasing their revenue. By the way, with 10% being the benchmark, if the number of registrants grows, 10% grows as well, just so we're clear. So there's a
Mm.
correlation financially between increased open participation uh, also equals more money, and then it also equals more people getting invited to quarterfinals, which also equals more money, since it's not a straight line. It's not 20 people, it's 10%, so it's percent of the whole, in fact, by continent. So yes, those things are good things. But again, when it comes down to translating it to more views and tickets sold or butts and seats, those things have to do with CrossFit being, broadly speaking, more appealing as an entertainment aspect for people that don't just do CrossFit. And so that would be something that's not, I suppose, related to the CrossFit Open itself or the
Sure.
quarterfinals. They have more money, which is good, which hopefully they make the right investments to continue to grow those sorts of things and to continue to push the sport forward, to partnerships outside of CrossFit, endemic brands, etc., paying athletes perhaps more to be able to professionalize. You get more professional athletes that maybe creates the level of competition gets even tighter and greater. But I don't necessarily think that fills seats, not necessarily.
I think that my bottom line with open registration is that it's amazing that we're over 11% growth from last year, and I think that that is a win for CrossFit, but in the same breath, I think they need to do better at marketing and getting those people who are not doing CrossFit yet, maybe they're doing Orange Theory or a boot camp style of workout. Somehow we need to reach those people, show them that CrossFit can be inclusive, for everybody, and get them to start joining an affiliate.
Yeah, I would say it's similar. I think 11% growth is very positive. I would like, I think, you know, it would be really nice to see. Hopefully, we're talking about this in 5 years, and we're seeing 5 years of 11% growth.
Yeah.
I'm encouraged by it. I like it. The bottom line though for me would be that I would like to see more exponential growth. I would like to see that tick up a little bit higher. It would have been nice to see 15 to 20% growth. I don't know if they had any internal figures they were trying to meet. So it's hard to know whether they were they met their benchmark here or not. But growth is growth. It's great to see double digit growth too. I think they should be very happy with this. I think CrossFit should, as a community as a whole, should look at this in a positive way. Um, uh, but like you said, with the levels element, I would like to see a much more coordinated communications plan and marketing plan for growing CrossFit. If somebody were to come to me and say, "Hey, what's CrossFit's vision?" Justin, you know a lot about what's going on in the world of CrossFit. Like, what's CrossFit's vision and plan for growing, growing this to X million participants? I would say I have absolutely no idea.
Mm.
So the bottom line still remains. I think they hit 11%. I'm not sure if they knew that they were going to hit it. I'm not sure if they were trying to hit 11. I'm glad that they hit 11. Double digit growth is always good. Maybe it was on accident. Maybe it was on purpose. I'm going to give credit where credit's due, though, and say that I'm glad that it happened. But I would like to see something that makes a little bit more sense, like communicating elements like levels and other things. So
Thanks, Justin.
anytime.